have terrible news.
Two lovers of beauty and truth
have died. But luckily, Emily Dickinson, she's written about one of their last conversations. And today we're going to read all about it.
To make you feel as carved of purest love, oh Emily. You said you went in the seas he wrote on. Oh, you're Emily Dickinson.
Good morning and welcome to Lost for Words. I am Sarah Wood. Thank you for joining me outside today. This is a little experiment. It's actually a little bit warm outside today, which makes the attic I've been recording these in a little bit warm. So I thought I would try my front porch and see if we can handle the outdoor noises, because it is way too hot in the attic. And it actually feels really good out here. There's like a nice breeze. So we'll try this for today and see how it goes. So this is number 449 in the complete poems of Emily Dickinson.
I died for beauty, but was scarce adjusted in the tomb, when one who died for truth was lain in an adjoining room. He questioned softly why I failed. For beauty, I replied, and I for truth. Themself are one, we brethren are, he said. And so, as kinsmen met a night, we talked between the rooms until the moss had reached our lips and covered up our names.
This is one of those poems by Emily Dickinson that when you read it, it's one where you're like, oh man, I wish I wrote that. I feel like she has quite a few that are like that, that are just like the way she like creates such a cool visual picture in your mind, and at the same time like really gives you something to think about. It's like, oh, like that's so yummy. Depending on when you read it and how you're feeling, it can have such a different feeling. Like, I know I've read this before and it's felt like sort of like dark and romantic to me. And then there's other times I've read it and it feels more like it has sort of like this quiet, nonchalant feeling. So it makes me curious if it's like that for other people too, when they read this poem. It like depends on your mood, like what you get out of it. But okay, so let's just dive into this because it's so good. So you have Emily Dickinson, and I'm going to assume that she's the I in this poem. She says, I died for beauty, but was scarce adjusted in the tomb. So you can sort of imagine Emily Dickinson has died. And they're barely like, just think of like, she's barely like gotten comfortable, which I love that language. Like you imagine like she's been given this tomb or mausoleum because it has rooms, so there's places to move around. So she's got her space and she's like barely like like figured out how she's gonna be like, you know, resting for eternity. Like you imagine like this bear that's getting ready to hibernate and it's like moving around, getting its little space ready. And so she's like getting comfortable, getting adjusted. She's barely gotten comfortable and she hears a noise in another room. And it is someone who has died for truth. And they were laying in an adjoining room. Here they go. They're putting somebody else in there with her. And they have buried truth. So to me, this whole little first section is kind of funny. To me, upon this reading of it, it feels like it has this like nonchalant feeling about it. Just kind of like, so I was washing my hair yesterday when the phone rang. And it's like, I died for beauty but was scarce adjusted in the tomb, and one who died for truth was laid in the other room. So like I was just getting started vacuuming the floors of my house when all of a sudden the doorbell rang. You know what I mean? Like, it's that, like, you're about to be doing something that you need to do, and then all of a sudden there's noise and there's something happening. But for her, she's dead, and she's in the tomb, and the thing that's happening that's disrupting what she's doing is someone else has died, and they're putting them in the room next to her, which this also makes me sort of imagine, like, I don't know why, it makes me think of like somebody who's in jail, and like they've got their own jail cell and nobody's next to them, so they've got their space, they're quiet, and then all of a sudden there's a new prisoner, and they brought him in and put him in the cell next to him, and they're like, hey, what are you in for? And they're like, oh God, there's somebody else here. So it has that feeling of like, you thought you were going to be alone, and now you're not alone. There's somebody else there with you, which I find kind of funny. So truth. This person has died for truth and is in the room next door, and he starts to talk. He questions softly. He's like, hey, why did you fail? Which I think is a fascinating word to use, failed. He asked why I failed. And so I feel like failed has something to do with death. Like, they're assuming because you're dead that you failed. And she replies, for beauty. So you can hear them like whispering across the rooms. He's like, why did you fail? For beauty. What about you? Oh, an eye for truth. Themself are one. We brethren are, he said. So his response to her dying for beauty is that he has died for truth. And he says, oh, we're family, we're brothers, because those are the same thing. Which is very interesting. I don't know if when you think of beauty and truth, if you think of them as the same thing. And it says, and so as kinsmen met a night, we talked between the rooms until the moss had reached our lips and covered up our names. So there they are laying in this tomb in opposite rooms, and they're talking about how they ended up there. So the first question that comes to my mind is, okay, if she died for beauty and he died for truth, how did they die? Like, were they murdered? Like, did someone kill them because they were standing up for beauty, because they were standing up for truth? Did they spend their lives chasing beauty and chasing truth? Like, were they so exhausted in their search for beauty and their search for truth that it killed them? Or does it mean that they spent their lives living for the idealization of an idea? Like, that she spent her life living for the idea of beauty, of idealizing beauty. And did he live his life idealizing truth? And so it's like, were they obsessive over the ideas? Like, what was it? Like, how did they die? Like, in what way did they die for beauty and die for truth? Like, what exactly does that mean? Were they searching for it like a treasure? Did they sell their soul for it? Did they idealize it? But he says that they are one. He is saying we're in here for the same reason. But he said we both failed looking for the same thing. So to me, okay, this guy has made a statement. And so first I wondered how they died for these things. And the second thing I wondered was, is his statement true? Did they die for the same thing? Are truth and beauty the same thing?
The idea that truth and beauty are the same thing is a really wonderful idea, and it makes you feel really good inside. The idea that all truth is beautiful, and that every beautiful thing is true and isn't false, that it almost feels like it's for another world, like maybe some kind of heaven where there's only love and there's an absence of evil and death and selfishness.
Can truth be ugly? Can it be terrible? Can it be disgusting? Or can something that's fake, something that's a lie, something that's false, be beautiful? So I kind of want to play devil's advocate for a minute. And I'm going to put something out there that's a lie. So Santa Claus. Santa Claus, the idea of Santa Claus coming all around the world to bring children gifts, in one night every year. And he knows what they want and brings them something special. That is not true. If you're a little kid watching this, I'm really sorry. We would not consider that true. But children, they believe, and they think it's something magical and wonderful. So is this idea that some people believe, that children believe in, is it beautiful? Is it magical and beautiful? Or is it ugly and disgusting because it's not true? So to me, I would say some people believe that it's beautiful because it's a magical idea. It makes people dream, and it makes people excited and have fun. It brings fun and magic into people's everyday lives, even though it's not quite true. So you would say it's a lie. But does that mean it's completely all ugly because it's a lie? Okay, now this is a truth. So if there's a child, and this child is abused, neglected, and hated, you would say, if they're abused, neglected, and hated, that they are not loved. In their childhood, they were not loved. So that statement is true. That child was neglected, abused, hated. They were not loved. That is true. But is that beautiful just because it's true? So that is me playing devil's advocate with the idea that truth is beauty. That maybe that can be flipped on its head. That it could be proven that some things that are lies are beautiful and some things that are truth are not beautiful. I had a much harder time with thinking about how that truth is beautiful. I think truth can be beautiful, but is it always beautiful? Is everything that's beautiful always true? I guess I don't quite agree with them being the same thing. But I will say, the thing that I think that truth and beauty have in common is that they're really big ideas, and they're so big that they sort of have a question mark about them. So I imagine if this woman died for beauty, that there was a question inside of her that was wondering what is real beauty? What is beautiful? That everything people say is beautiful, is that truly beautiful? Is there beauty in places that people don't think there's beauty? Am I beautiful? Looking for what is truly beautiful. And then with truth, you can imagine this person that has lived, who's grown up in a world where they've been told all sorts of things. And they're like, this is true, this is true. And this person is like, well, is everything they tell me really true? And then, well, all these things that are out there, all these ideas, they're contradicting. So what is true? So you see like that both of these ideas can ignite a question inside a person, and maybe even a quest, a journey to discover what is true and what is beautiful. I feel like both of these ideas, truth and beauty, if you idealize them and pursue them, there is some part of you that is desiring to transcend what you've been told and what everyone else is telling you is beautiful and what everyone else is telling you is true. A desire to find out if there's more to it than what people say. Okay, imagine. So with beauty, it makes me think of like the poet or the artist. So imagine imagine a country where everyone is poor, where everyone is starving, where everyone is like living in a place where everything is trashy and just dirty. In a place like that, I imagine like a poet or an artist, and I imagine if their pursuit is beauty, that person, that they can sift through all the terrible and find beauty in things other people might not be able to find beauty in like simple things like the colors of things, the placement of something, the story behind something. It feels like they're able to find a way to love things that other people have maybe not seen beauty in. I feel like the person who idealizes beauty will find it, even in the most lacking places. They'll die to prove that it matters, that they'll find the flower growing in the trash dump. They think beauty points us to something beyond us, and that's hope that there is more to life, and they know that beauty moves us. So now imagine a place where there is an abundance of falseness, an abundance of lies, fake people, fake news, not quoting Donald Trump, concocted religions, politicians, cults, spreading manipulation and control. There's an abundance of lies, like used to manipulate people. I feel like the person who values truth, the person who idealizes truth, feels that there's more to life than what they are seeing in that dark place. And so they think their desire is also to transcend what's in front of them. And he rises above the noise to see what is real. It washes away the fake and leaves us with what is real. How can we know what to think if we don't know what is true? So I guess to me, with beauty and truth, I think of like the poet and the artist, or like the philosopher and the scientist, and this like feeling that there's more to things than what we're given at face value, if that makes sense. And so the thing I would say that this person who died for truth and this person who died for beauty have in common is that they both are idealizers of an idea, that they've lifted up an idea and said, like, this is more important than we think it is. This is very important, and it's so important. I am going to like spend my life in pursuit of this idea of seeing the depth that there is in the world behind this idea, that there's got to be more. So I would also say that they were idealizers of an idea, and I would say they are lovers of transcending lovers of transcending. That there's, I feel like this world can be very hopeless sometimes, very dark sometimes, and it can be very hard to sift through what people tell you, what media tells you, what religion tells you, what your parents tell you, what your peers tell you, that it almost like there's like this curtain, and that there's more behind the curtain to what we can really see. And they felt like it was something valuable to like spend their life in search of. And both of them ended up dying for it. We don't know how they died because it doesn't tell us. It doesn't say if they were martyrs or if they actually just spent their life living for these ideas. But they did. And I love how this poem ends. I think it's really beautiful. Like if you imagine like two siblings, because he said that he called them brethren. So basically they're family, and they're in the same tomb and they're laying there. I feel like you can almost imagine like best friends, in two twin beds, and they're laying there and they stay up all night talking about big ideas, talking about their hopes and dreams and big ideas. I don't know if you've ever stayed up all night talking to someone, talking to like a sibling or a best friend, and you just stay up talking and talking and talking until you both fall asleep, until you've just exhausted yourself in the conversation that you can't even, like you would keep talking, but you're just so exhausted, your eyes take over and they close. You don't have any control over it, you just fall asleep. And it's not necessarily that you wanted to stop talking. That's what it feels like to me, because it says that we talked between the rooms until the moss had reached our lips and covered up our names. So you can almost imagine them laying there, and like the moss is almost like, as it grows and creeps up slowly, like almost to their mouths, or up to their to the tombstone where their names are, or that it's almost like the sun coming up. Like it's nighttime, and during the night you've stayed up talking all night long, and it seems like your body almost knows like, oh, the sun's coming up and we haven't even gone to sleep yet. And so it's just like your body's like, no, we're going to sleep. And it takes over and you fall asleep, even though you might not have even been done talking. To me, that's the kind of feeling that the end of this poem has. And it covers up their name until you can't tell who is who anymore. There's no more, it's erased the label of who they are. It's like this slow and peaceful, like blending of their ideas, kind of. Yeah, it's almost like, makes it feel like truth and beauty sort of like melted together, sort of. But it was like, but moss was the thing that melted them together. I don't know. I just love this poem. I feel like this is a poem you could come back to at different times in your life, depending on like what you're living through, what you're going through, and you could probably get something a little bit different out of it, or you could see something new. because truth and beauty are like such big ideas. But I just love these two. I love their time in this tomb and their conversation. And it's like you imagine, because you only get to see the very end of their life, their this time in the tomb, this one night in the tomb, it leaves their whole lives that they lived before they ended up here, like in your imagination. So it lets you think, like, this person who died for beauty, like, what was their life like? Like, what did they do while they were alive? And then, like, this person who, like, died for truth, like, what was his life like? What did he do? What did he spend his whole life doing? So it's like this tiny, short little time, and you wonder what came all before it. And then you almost wonder, like, is it completely over? Like, the moss covered up their names. Is it over? Or is there something after this? Like, it's just this one night in a tomb. Like, it's amazing. It's like, what is on the outside of that parentheses? You know, I don't know. It's kind of amazing. But anyway, thank you for going into that poem with me. Hope I gave you some fun things to think about. And I guess I'd be curious if I could leave you with a question. It would be like, maybe, do you feel like there's an idea in your life that you feel like, an idea that you idealize, something that you live for, that you kind of obsess over? Like, I'm trying to think of some ideas. Like, maybe it could be freedom. Do you obsess over freedom, over your own freedom, over others' freedom? Do you idealize hope? Do you obsess over finding hope even in the darkest places, or bringing other people hope? I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of ideas that that people could do that with. So I'd be very curious what other people obsess over and would spend their life in search of. And like, if you found yourself in a grave, that somebody would be like, what did you die for? And you would be like, I died for comfort and laziness. I love to watch TV. I watched every single thing that was on Netflix in my lifetime. And I ate lots of cereal and pizza. Or would it be, what about love? Like, I died for love. Like, I think that would be an interesting thing to live for and die for, and try to understand that there's more to love than, like, what we see, than how we first experience what we think is love. Yeah, what would somebody look like who spent their life obsessing over, in search of understanding love? Would that person have loved greater, loved more, loved themselves more, loved others more? Would they experience more heartbreak? I don't know. Some interesting ideas that you could play with. Anyway, thank you for joining me. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next time.